Hi, I'm Pat Morris, your host for the PM Talk Show. Our telecast is made possible by these fine underwriters, and we thank them very much.
Locally owned and operated by Drs. Wheat and Boobridge, the Animal Care Center in Hammond and Pet Care Center in Ponchatoula have 6 vets on staff with nearly a century of combined experience. Celebrating our 30th birthday in May, the Animal Care Center has offered a full line of veterinary services, which includes medicine, surgery, grooming, boarding, and 7 days a week emergency services. Our mission is to provide the highest quality of veterinary care in a professional, compassionate manner. The Animal Care Center and Pet Care Center, a commitment to excellence with love and care for your pet.
Welcome again to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Morris, your host. We're out here today on beautiful Miller Lake, and we want to wish everybody a happy 4th of July, which is tomorrow. But before tomorrow, we wanted to bring a special guest on who's very familiar with child welfare and attendance and the effects of what happens when things are done. Mrs. Osa Betts-Williams, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you this morning?
I'm doing just great. Thank you for coming. But we have some issues, and we feel like the public should be made aware of what has happened, possibly what's going on. So I'm going to open up the camera to you and let you explain why you're here today and those things that you want to discuss.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Morris. As you know, I have been an advocate for students in the school system as a member and vice president of the NAACP for several years now. And with that being said, there are other issues in the school system that I'd like to talk about in addition to some of the things that's happening continuously with child welfare and attendance. I want to start off first by talking about, again, the fact that there are so many situations where children are not receiving due process as due process is stated in the law. In some cases, yes, there are some Step 5 hearings, some conferences, and those kinds of things. But in my experience, there have been some things that have gone on that are really disheartening. Students are being put out of school for minor things. You know, they may receive a minor referral, and before you know it, it becomes a major referral, and they end up in a Step 6 hearing. And sometimes those students are students who need additional help that they're not receiving, and as a result, they're put out of school, in many cases to be sent to the Tangipahoa Alternative Program, where they're receiving virtual learning, virtual education. And some children just are not cut from that cloth. They are not able to work with that program and be successful as they should be. So that gives me a segue into another important issue, because administrators at the schools and staff at the schools are doing as much as they possibly can to help students in most cases, but there are some breakdowns that are very critical to what's going on in general. And one of them is some recent events that occurred, and that's the transfer of Mr. Perry to Amite High and Mrs. Johnson to Hammond Junior High, which was basically a swap in stations. I'm really concerned about that because as I've looked back at the records, it appears that more African American administrators are being moved on a more regular basis than other administrators. And I don't understand why this is happening, but one of the things that I do know is that administrators normally, at the end of the school year, begin to put everything in place for the coming school year, which means that they have all of their programs in place, they have all of the staff and faculty in places where that particular administrator know that they can best serve. With changes on such a frequent basis, we're throwing the schools out of kilter, because when a new administrator comes in, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to follow through
Right.
with what the previous administrator has done. And again, I'm speaking from knowledge and allegations that have been brought to our organization and to us.
Right.
So it's not anything new that's happening. Another situation I can think of, Mr. Reginald Elsey, who was working in central office, and allegedly, without much notice, he was sent to a school in Ponchatoula, another African American that was moved on a not so pleasant exchange. So that's one of the situations that concern me about the movement. With this movement comes chaos, because when these children come back to school the following school year, they're looking for their principal.
Right.
And the principal is not there. They have a whole new person in place. And with Mr. Perry's case, I can say, because we've worked very closely with him, trying to help in any way we can to make sure that things are running smoothly. Of course, it's not that he really needed that much help, because he was fantastic at what he was doing with Hammond Junior High Magnet School STEM program. And Ms. Johnson was very well settled into Amite High School, and there were some really amazing things going on at that school with her. One of the things that I can remember seeing on the news, Ms. Morris, is I think it's her communications or journalism program, where donations were made from a celebrity, you know, who was really interested in what was going on at that school and what those children were learning. She had her staff in place, and it's my belief that when an administrator has good success at a school, they should be allowed to continue that success, because they need a baseline to work from.
Right.
They have to have this baseline in order to know how to go forward to continue to make that school successful. And in my opinion, and our opinion as we've talked about it, those are two schools who've had good successes
Right.
with what they had going on. Mr. Perry was only at Hammond Junior High for 2 years, which the work he was doing was great. And he was beginning to really get into some things that could help the students really grow. And I think that's one of the more important things that was going on at those schools. Mr. Hugh Wallace was moved from Independence High to O.W. Dillon. That's a third African American administrator who was moved just this year. I know that Mr. Stanton was moved, but he was serving as, I think, an assistant principal in waiting, but that was an expected move. And so, you know, it appears that these principals are being moved, and there are allegations, and I'm going to say that the allegations are as disturbing as the moves are. Right. There are allegations that there's been some intimidation by Mr. Colway, some intimidation by certain board members. You know, the people can't work under this kind of pressure. Right. And it's disturbing for me, it's disturbing for the community. I've spoken with people in the community who have voiced their opinion. They don't understand what's going on, why it's going on. And the ultimate responsibility starts and stops with the head, who's Mr. Colway. And I think that he should really take greater consideration of what is happening. Of course, yeah, he has his reasons, I'm sure, for doing what he's doing, but those reasons should be made clear and transparent to the community, to the schools, and not just disrupt the school and move someone out of the clear blue. You know, that's just not good. Another thing that has happened is that when the changes come about with these schools, the teachers tend to be, you know, somewhat less passionate about their jobs. These teachers are talking about how they're just waiting for the next hammer to fall. Yes, they do have unions, and they do talk to their union members just as they talk to in confidence. And again, you know that the things that we explore or that are brought to us are a part of what we do with the NAACP and the school system. So anything that goes on in the school system is important to what we do as an organization. Mm-hmm. Also, it's important to the advocacy process, because community activists are no more than advocates in general. You know, they're concerned about what's going on, not just in the school community, but the community at large. Mm-hmm. So those are some of my concerns as a part of the community at large, but most specifically in the school system.
Okay, let's back up a little bit to the transfers that are being made, and we'll carry on into the next segment. But when you look at Hammond Junior High and Hammond High, when Mr. Troxclair was there, right, there was a great collaboration going on between those two schools, because what they were doing was sharing information on what was needed in Hammond High, what was needed at Hammond Junior High, and both principals and administrators were working together to see that happen, and it led on into Southeastern, which we felt was a good thing, because regardless to popular belief, a lot of kids are going to end up at Southeastern University because it's right here. And when you have programs that children can take these kind of college prep courses, mm-hmm, they will be better prepared. And that's what was happening at Hammond High, with kids coming from Hammond Junior High fully prepared. It caused Mr. Troxclair's cohort scores, as per what he told me, to go up tremendously. And it's about collaborating and working together. And when you talk about the drive that these types of moves take from teachers, that bleeds into the lives of the children. Exactly. And you end up having a school again that Mr. Perry had completely turned around, and everybody knows it. Yes. But whatever the reasons are that they were done, I don't think those reasons justify that move, because it's hurting the kids at the end of the day. And it's hurting the economy at the end of the day, because businesses who want to locate here, especially white-collar businesses, are not going to bring their corporate people to Hammond to move their businesses here, because our system sucks. They're not going to do it.
And it does. It does. And as you mentioned about the moving of businesses into the area, we have to also think about people who are moving out of the area because of what they perceive as instability, right, in this school system. Right. So many people, because they feel that they don't have any reason, because of that, they feel they don't have any reason to spend their monies in Hammond. Right. So they go to Baton Rouge, they go to Covington, they go to Mandeville, they go to Madisonville, they go to New Orleans or any of the surrounding areas to make their purchases, because their tax dollars are going into these businesses, which yield some support to the school system. And Tangipahoa Parish School System is the tax collector for this parish, right, which means that they get a percentage, as I understand it, of the monies that they collect.
Right. Well, we're going for a break now, and we'll come back with part 2 of what's going on in the Tangipahoa Parish School System via transfers and whatever else is going on. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Shelters are the best places to find a new pet.
What a perfectly beautiful little lady.
That's where you'll discover healthy, loyal, and loving animals.
You little rascal.
Eager to become a part of your family. A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet.
Oh, ladies first.
Be that person. Adopt.
This is living. Hey, kid.
To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
Welcome back to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Marsh, your host, and we have with us today our special guest, Mrs. Osa Betts-Williams, who is a community advocate. She's also a retired child welfare and attendance officer for the Tangipahoa Parish school system, and she's my first vice president for the Greater Tangipahoa Parish branch NAACP. Before break, Ms. Williams, we were talking about the transfers and the effects that it had and how both Hammond High and Hammond Junior High were collaborating to do what they needed to do collectively for the students and preparing them to either come to Hammond High, or Mr. Troxclair was sharing what he would need, and Mr. Perry was sharing, well, show me what you need and we can do what we need to do to make sure that when a child is in the 9th grade, they wouldn't have to take time to prepare them to take 9th grade courses. They will come prepared. We mentioned a little bit about the teachers, and sometimes the morale is down. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, let me make a clarification in that title. I worked as a child welfare and attendance officer for a full year and in between years, but was never given that title. And again, I allege that it was because I am a very strong person who do not just bow at the whim of other people. So I was never given that title, Miss Pat, believe it or not. And even after I received my certification and was told that I would get the position after I worked in it for a year, I was never given the title. When I retired, I think they had placed me as an Options 3 coordinator, which I never worked in because I retired on disability because of my illnesses. But anyway, we're going to go forward with that information. You were saying that teachers were being moved as well, and that's true. We have a tremendous amount of teachers being moved from school to school, and this is disruptive also for that particular school, because once this teacher has gotten into the rhythm of teaching that child, those classes that they're assigned to, then they're moved or shipped off to another school, an unfamiliar setting where they have to start all over again. I want to get into textbook adoption also as a part of this. Since we've become more of a program-oriented school system, I know that in past years, and I don't know if this is still going on because I did not have the opportunity to check about textbook adoptions, but students become familiar with a certain field of information, and when the textbooks are changed, they have to go back and learn a whole new different way of learning.
Right.
So textbook adoption and the sources and resources used in the schools are not necessarily in the best interest of that child's education. Now back to the teachers. Teachers are being moved, and again, with no notice. And I don't understand this no notice movement process. If you're going to move somebody, at least give them some warning.
Right.
You know, if you're going to move an administrator, at least let them have the opportunity to kind of orient the new administrator into what they're doing at their school. You know, when you move that person, they're coming in blind. I mean, feeling their way through what has been left and what they expect to use as a basis for growing the students at that school. Now, in conversations with teachers and some support staff as well, there's a lot of disrespect with administrators or staff persons over these individuals. I've personally witnessed teachers and support staff being reprimanded in the hallways. That's no place to reprimand an employee. This is a private matter. This should be taken into an office or a particular area where this remains a private matter. I'm concerned about that because what's happening is the morale of let's start with the janitor and lunchroom workers and teachers and on up is being damaged. And as a result, people are no longer working from the heart as they've done before in past years. I mean, teaching is a passion. There's a saying that there are those who teach, they teach, and there are those who can't do other things. So I know that's not totally, but that's the concept of it.
Right.
And those teachers go to school, as I did, to educate children, not to deal with a lot of foolishness from the administration, not to deal with being moved at the drop of a hat, not to deal with some of the things that are going on in Tangipahoa Parish school system. And again, as I said, look, the buck stops with the leader.
Right.
Mr. Colway and the school board members are responsible ultimately for every single thing that goes on in this school system.
Well, when you look at what's going on with our school performance scores and our numbers, I think when he became superintendent, we were ranked 29 in the state. And at last check, we were 59, so that's a tremendous drop.
30.
When you look at the school LEAP scores, to say we grew by 1 percentage point parish-wide is pretty much, on an elementary basis and middle school basis, that's insulting, to say the least, because you have other parishes whose scores continue to climb by leaps and bounds. So that tells me one thing: there's a problem somewhere. When we look at special education, if we can talk about that briefly, I'm looking at the stats, and the stats say that if a child cannot read by the 3rd grade, I'm told that that child is placed in special ed here, and they remain until they're about 16.
Allegedly.
How can, allegedly, yeah, and some numbers I've seen that happen.
Exactly.
So how can that be fixed as a child welfare and attendance officer?
Well, Ms. Pat, it is my belief that children need support.
Right.
They need support when it's recognized that there is a problem. If this child has a problem with behavior, it doesn't mean that this child is just a problem child.
Right.
One of the terms that I really, really cringe when I hear it is at risk. I don't like that term because when you really look at it, we as Americans are at risk. You look at the things that are going on around us in this world. Children are a product of their environment.
Right.
And their environment is not just the home. Their environment is incorporated with the community they live in, the city in which they live, the state in which they live. Louisiana has always ranked very low in progression as a state. I think at one time Mississippi was even above Louisiana.
Still is.
So, I think that we as Louisianians need to look at what we're doing. When we talk about special education students, we're talking about holding people back who could possibly have the potential to move forward and become productive citizens.
Right.
I'm not saying that some of these people can go out and get bachelor's, master's, doctorate degrees or law degrees or whatever. I'm saying that they can do things to become productive citizens with some assistance. That assistance starts with the school system.
Right.
If they are not properly educated, they will not be properly infused into the community once they graduate. I've seen it personally. Young men who have brilliant minds. If you can go out and run a business as a drug dealer or a criminal, I mean, that takes some thought. I can't even fathom how that would operate. And I have an education. So, you know, we look at these young people and say, oh, well, they're slow, they're not too smart, but they go out and run these illegal businesses. So there has to be some smarts, some capabilities, some ability to be educated in the midst of being a special ed student. I think that students should, if they have to go to special ed, should be placed there for 1 year for remediation, period. 1 year for remediation. They should have all the services that they need afforded to them, whether it's a tutor, whether it's, what do you call it, interventionist, I'm sorry, or whomever, social workers, counselors. If they work in tandem with that child and with that family, there can be success.
Right.
There can be success, without a doubt.
And when we look at what's going on, the long and short and the summation of it all, we have problems in our educational system that need fixing.
Exactly.
And we need to come together and do it. I want to encourage the community that since this change has made, we are expecting that it will be in court to get it reversed, but until that happens, if it's not done before the beginning of this school year, we're asking both communities to continue to support both schools, because at the end of the day, it's about the children.
Exactly.
Now, we're doing our part. We ask that you do your part. Well, we thank you, Ms. Williams, for coming on, Ms. Betts-Williams for coming on, and we have to come back and continue to talk about a lot of things that's happening, because they have to be said.
They have to be said.
And the people have a right to know.
And I have so much
Right.
more to say, Ms.
I know you do. But time is not going to permit it today, and we're about out of time. So we thank you for joining us again. Please continue to do so. Remember that knowledge is powerful. It does matter. Have a safe 4th of July. God bless.